Let's dive into our first point. Abe, do you want to explain to our viewers what hidden homelessness is?
Yeah, for sure. So before we talk about hidden homelessness, I want to paint a picture of family homelessness and the families who come to our family emergency shelter, so that we understand the complexity of the issues that they face. So the majority of our families, almost 45%, so that's a pretty high number, arrive at our door because they've run out of alternatives. So that means they have all their options that maybe you or I would have are gone. So they've been doing couch surfing. I know that sounds like, I don't know, somebody puts their couch in the ocean and now they're surfing. It's not actually that. What it means is essentially I'm staying on people's couches, which we've probably all done it at a certain point if you've been to university or moved from one city to the next. But when you got children with you, everything is profoundly different. And of course, at our intake, 1/3 of our families literally just say the reason they're here is because they can't afford rent. So it's just I had to choose between paying rent for my family and I and food, or rent and I and power, and I just couldn't absorb all of these things. And this is not an in from the cold thing. The city of Calgary, of course, we know that there's about 15,000 families in the city of Calgary who are right on the edge. The Calgary Foundation recently did a tremendous study that showed this, and it is massive, the amount of economic anxiety that is out there. People not feeling that they're able to absorb all of their costs. And so, when you think about, families who are at risk of homelessness in Calgary, that number of 15,000 is actually pretty accurate. And sort of people say, well, how do you get that number? Well, this is sort of the estimate of the number of families who are paying more than 50% of their income on rent. And whenever you're paying more than 50% of your income, not on a mortgage, but just on rent, all of a sudden you realize these families are, that proverbial one paycheck away from experiencing homelessness. So similar to adult homelessness, where in the last homeless count, about 20% of the homeless were Indigenous. Of course, and so that's a higher number because only about 3 or 4% of Calgarians are Indigenous, but about 20% are homeless. At In From the Cold, what we've seen is about 60% of our families are Indigenous. And so, in all, about 1/5 of our families who walk through our front door come from reserve, First Nations reserve, directly to our shelter. And so, like every family that we take care of, they're looking for the same things as we are all looking for, and that is better opportunity for their children. But of course, particularly with Indigenous families, discrimination obviously is a big factor. I'm going to just use the term racism. I mean, it's absolutely still there. And then, of course, lack of education and employment opportunities and affordable housing hold back these Indigenous families. And so, of course, these families do everything they can to not have to come to shelter. I mean, this is not a comfortable environment, and please reach out to any of us if you'd ever like a tour. We'd love to walk you through In From the Cold so you see that. But, when we talk about people doing everything they can to avoid coming to a shelter, what that really means is hidden homelessness. So that is, people doing everything they can to divert it, to push it away. And so, not a whole lot of families will sleep rough, like literally under a bridge, but there are all kinds of families who are hidden in terms of their homelessness. So when we talk about hidden homelessness, what the stats tell us is that for every person who's in a shelter, that there are at least 3 people who are experiencing hidden homelessness for unsheltered. So, if In From the Cold had 100 people here last night, then there are another 300 people who are outside of In From the Cold who are what we would call the hidden homeless. And so, it's kind of scary to me when you think about the fact that we've been full 60% of the time or more in 2017, and yet there's probably triple the number of people who are in our shelter compared to who are out, who are hidden homeless. They're sleeping on couches, they're sleeping in their cars, often they're in tough situations. Why do they not come to shelters? Well, sometimes because they don't feel safe. And that's, maybe they're afraid of, what they might experience in shelter, but sometimes what they're more afraid of is the displacement, of course, to their family structure, and to their routine. And that is a major concern, of course, when you're dealing with children.